I would like to invite Ms. Ankita Hariramani, Counsel for FinTech, AI, ML, Spice Root Legal, to share her perspectives on responsible AI for BFSI.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, NASSCOM, for this opportunity. A lot has been already said about AI, so I'm going to try and keep this short and quick and focus specifically on the BFSI sector. So I'm sure we all have looked at the use cases that AI has in the BFSI sector, right? It's numerous, I can't stop. There's tracking, consumer behavior, KYC, fraud detection, AML checks, personalized banking, chatbots, and the list is on, so on and so forth, right? Even the regulators over a period of time, and especially in the last 2 years, 3 years, have become very conscious on the ability and the uniqueness that AI brings to the relevant sector. BFSI, of course, is a fairly traditional sector, so the incorporation of AI in the sector has numerous benefits. So recently you will see SEBI, RBI, PFRDA, IRDA all coming up with relevant legislations, discussions, committee reports, emphasizing on the ability to incorporate, use, exploit AI for different use cases. But let's look at the problem, right? While we've touched upon these briefly, I feel each of these problems interact with the BFSI sector very, very differently, right? Lack of diversity in the programmers who are coding. Like it was discussed during the panel throughout, programmers come with their own set of biases. If there isn't a diverse team that's looking at coding, that's looking at what sort of decision-making model is being developed, it's going to impact the outcome and lead to discrimination against individuals who could have benefited from the particular product, right? Right from a wealth product to a loan product to, a false alarm or a trigger with respect to an individual as a fraudulent transaction, right? So programmers, like companies, need to focus on how diversity is kind of brought into the team that starts coding and is developing an algorithm as a whole. We'll get to opacity and black box towards the end. Let's look at data inequality, right? Now, for banking sector, for the financial sector, for the fintechs who are working in this space, data's utmost, right? It's very important. While they may have a lot of data and a digital footprint about me, they might not have it for, say, gig workers, right? Or people in different tier 3, tier 4 cities. Now, because our algorithms are based on data sets with a large variety of data, there is a possibility that your data and your result based on the data could be incorrect because of the data inequalities that have crept into the systems over a period of time. So there's a constant need to check how the algorithms are performing, right? To ensure traceability, to ensure how a particular model is working and why is it not working in favor of certain people. Now, the other issue that comes in is interpretation of data beyond the context, right? I can come up with an algorithm, say, for example, for lending, where shopping pattern at a particular grocery store for a buy now, pay later product or an instant credit is a parameter that's taken into consideration. Now, if I were to look at AI, who's probably focusing on how there are defaults associated with a certain grocery store, right, may tag all users who are shopping from that store as high risk, right? But what happens when you start looking at outcomes over a period of time where these grocery stores were in a particular location, were catering to a particular sect, right, or were in certain areas? Then the discrimination that is built in is against those individuals and not just people who are actually defaulting, right? So interpreting data beyond the context is also a problem that arises that needs to be looked at very, very carefully in this. Proxy discrimination, how does that work, right? I can have parameters like having an owned house, having an income, particular bracket and salary scales for me to decide whether you should be eligible for a loan or not. But not having a house shouldn't reduce my credit worthiness. There are 15 or 50 other parameters that need to be taken into consideration. So ML and AI needs to constantly be in check to evaluate whether these issues are creeping into the system and creating discrimination on different bases, right? Exploiting vulnerable consumers. Now, this is fairly interesting. I was once told by a client that the best form of credit at a decent rate would be to the gig workers. They are naive, they are honest, they are hardworking, they will never default. Now, can companies start exploiting this, right? If my AI can give me data sets and details of users who are a certain income salary, can also give me users who are below a certain income salary. Can companies then exploit this to start probably charging slightly higher interest rates, non-negotiable loan terms, make it difficult, because they know this particular section will pay on time, right? No matter how much the interest rate is, they will take an add-on loan to pay a previous loan, but they will pay, right? So exploiting vulnerable consumers is something that needs to be very, very, very carefully looked at, right? Now, quickly touching upon the black box issue, right, and opacity. I know it's already spoken widely about, but I feel that for the banking and finance sector, especially, like there are two approaches. You either develop and deploy an algorithm and then you evaluate transparency and explainability and other aspects, or you build an algorithm in a manner that's traceable and explainable at the first instance. With this particular sector, and of course AI use in each sector will come with its own nuances, each company will have to adopt differently. But I suspect with a sector that is so fundamental and so primary to individuals' need, right, banking and finance, it needs to be a white box from day one. I don't know if there's an option to have a black box right there, right? The other aspects I think that are very, very important while responsible AI is at the forefront is data, right? The RBI, with the digital lending guidelines, has restricted loan service providers to access a lot of data. How do they then undertake ethical AI, right, in the absence of certain data sets? So that becomes important. How you access, what you access, how do you store it, who do you share it with, those aspects are fundamental. And then, of course, legal issues, liability issues, right? With black box, liability is tough. Who does the regulator go after? If there's a default, if there's discrimination, if there is a false positive or a false negative, who would be liable for the decision making that's happening through the AIs? Would the companies be liable? Would the CEOs be liable? The machines training on data sets and data sets over a period of time? These are the questions that we need to kind of look at. Responsible AI, no doubt, at the forefront, needs to be given the due importance, has to be incorporated on day one. I don't think, like the way with blockchain and crypto it came, people started using, it was years till legislation, and we're still figuring out what law governs. But I think with AI, we've kept up with time, right? We've kept up with how the industry is evolving, and we're trying to bring in mitigations right at day one. And I'm very, very impressed with this toolkit, right? I read up more about it before coming to the session, but I think it's toolkits like these that will kind of forefront and put pressure on companies to look at AI in a more responsible manner. That's it. Thank you.